Saskatchewan emphasis. It is great to have a group of pilot
Yes, it
here.
is. Praise
And,
God.
we're just determined and committed to coming along a church at a time and investing in them and helping them. Good Friday, at our Good Friday church service at the neighborhood, we passed the plate for Focus Saskatchewan.
They don't know this.
Okay, so we passed the plate for Focus Saskatchewan.
Listen to this.
And in the next week or two, you'll be getting a check from the neighborhood for $4,560. Now we deal with a little bigger mass of people than some churches. We understand that, but it's really something we can all do. I'm never afraid to pass a plate twice in a church service. We don't talk about money much at the neighborhood, but we're really comfortable passing the plate once or twice or 3 times in a service. And people respond as God's Spirit moves them. So I just challenge you, pastors, to do what you can. Let me remind you this afternoon that God is not a book. And God is not a worldview. God is not a businessman we happen to work for. God is our Father, who deeply loves each one of you, who cares for you, will never give up on you, will support you even through your stupid times. I know that's true because He's done it for me. Not God's for you, Father's for you. And your Father wants to be with us now as we look at some things that I think just help us lead our churches better. So I'm going to talk quickly, I hope, about excellence essentials. Excellence essentials in leadership. And I'm going to jump off the portion in Matthew chapter 25 and verse number 21. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. We know the story. It's the story or parable of the talents. Master's going away for an extended period of time. He wants to make sure everything he's concerned about is looked after. So he gives one person 5 talents, another person 2 talents, and the third one 1 talent. I don't get that. I don't get why God in His sovereignty chooses to give some people more talents than others. I look at some ministers and I'm deeply jealous of them. They are so talented. I don't have that much going for me. I just use what I've got.
Wow.
But you take the talents you've got and you're responsible for the talents you have. I want you to notice what the Lord says here. He doesn't say, great thoughts, good and faithful servant. He doesn't say, good heart, good and faithful servant. He says, well done, good and faithful servant. We need to understand what faithfulness is in the eyes of God. I have heard this sermon used at funerals almost more than anywhere else. And I'm not wanting to be unkind here, and I don't want to come across as being unkind. But it often seems to me this is the go-to verse in a funeral when the pastor can't think of anything nice to say about the person. Never really did anything in their whole life, but she was faithful. He was faithful. But in God's eyes, just sitting over your one little talent and doing nothing about it and having a nice heart and thinking good thoughts about other people isn't what makes you described as faithful. it's doing well. It's taking what God has given you and actually doing something with it. Who is faithful in God's sight? The person who has done well. Well done. Good and faithful servant. And as a matter of fact, the person who doesn't do anything doesn't get such a nice thing said about him. Matthew chapter 25 and verse number 26. The person who just took the talent and did nothing with it, but maybe shined it every morning to make sure it hadn't gone anywhere. The master says, "You wicked, lazy slave." Wicked, lazy. None of us in leadership want to be wicked and lazy.
It's true.
We want to be people who are acknowledged and recognized as having done well. So excellence is essential. Excellence is essential. Doing well is essential in leadership.
Yes.
And George Bullard has done a lot of time thinking about the 10 distinct periods in the life cycle of a church. Don't write this down with too much speed, because the next slide will make it clearer. But he says the church goes through the same cycle that individuals go through. They're birthed. They're born. And they go through a period of infancy and childhood and adolescence and adulthood. And they move into maturity and then an empty nest and retirement and old age and death. In North America, the average church lives for only 30 years. Pretty short life cycle. Now you say, "Oh, that can't be true. I know our church has been around 60 years. I know a church that's been around 100. But the average North American church lives for 30 years. I don't think that's God's plan. I don't think that's God's plan. So how do we lead a church what are the excellent essentials that keep a church moving and making a difference in its community? So George Bullard has put together a curve called the life cycle of a church. And there's 4 letters on the graph in front of you. V stands for vision. Where are we going? R stands for relationship. Who is going with us?
Yes.
M stands for ministry. How do we get there? And S stands for structure. What do we need to be controlling? Now notice on the chart that some of the letters are capitals and some are lowercase. And at different stages, there's different levels of involvement in all 4 of those things. The church normally just starts with a vision. We've got a dream. We're going to do something. We're going to do something great. We're going to do something exciting. And the church that doesn't start with a vision is really in trouble. I mean, you've got to have a reason to be excited about being born. So there's a vision. But once you've got a vision, you have to start gathering some people around you. Vision without relationships, without people to come alongside of you and begin to move the thing forward, just becomes a dream. And a dream is something you have while you're sleeping. If you're awake, you got a vision, you begin to move, and you begin to get people around you. And once you've got people around you, you enter into ministry. You begin to think, what do we need to be doing? How do we make a difference? How do we fulfill the vision? What are the practical steps we need to be doing? Well done. And then you get to some stage, And at the neighborhood, I'm spending far more time discussing this right now than I'd like to be. But where you realize you need some structure. And if you don't get structure, you will at some point have a real disorganized mess on your hands. So you build structure into it. And when you've got all four of those in balance and all four of them functioning, you're at the stage of adulthood. The challenge of leadership is to make sure you stay at the top of the bell curve. The challenge of leadership is to make sure you stay at the top of the bell curve where you're constantly examining vision, relationships, ministry, and structure.
Right.
And if you're not looking at all of them, you begin to go down the bell curve and you end up at this place none of us want to end up at, where we're dealing with death and ineffectiveness. Now, the Pentecostal tradition is not really to let churches die. We leave, put people on life support for eternity. But so vitalization is a better goal than revitalization.
Yes.
I know in the POC we've been talking a lot about revitalization. I think vitalization is a better word, and people can embrace it quicker, because if you use revitalization, it indicates you're already well down the bell curve. But really the challenge for all of us is to just stay vital and to keep our churches vital.
Yes, right.
It's much better to stay vital than to have to revitalize something. It's much easier to keep momentum than try to regain momentum.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge, pastors, church leaders here, is to stay at this place of the top of the curve, the adult stage. So what are the leadership essentials that will make things happen, that will keep a church vital? Let me give them to you. The first one is vision. Without a vision, people perish.
Right.
Without a vision, ministry doesn't take place. Vision is essential. And there are two kinds of visions that churches have. There are inbound visions and there are outbound visions. Inbound visions and outbound visions. I'm going to put two vision statements up on the PowerPoint now from real churches that exist. I'm not going to tell you which churches they are. But two church vision statements. Number one, to see personal relationships with Jesus grow in everyone every day. Second vision statement, to help people find and follow Jesus. The first mission statement, vision statement, is an inbound statement.
That's right.
We got these people together. We're just going to make sure everybody keeps growing in Jesus. The second vision statement is outbound. As leaders, I challenge you. Make sure the vision, mission statement of the ministry you're a part of is outbound.
Right. Yes.
You're looking at the fields that are white unto harvest. You're looking at the community. You're saying, oh God, show us, show us, show us, show us.
Right.
How to reach it, how to touch it, how to make a difference. Leaders, you need to spend a lot of time in your times together, your board meetings, your council meetings, talking about vision. If you lose sight of vision, you're in trouble. So I want you to notice the first thing that a church loses, according to Bullard, and I think he's right, the first thing a church loses when it's beginning the downhill slide. Vision's the first thing that goes.
Wow. Wow.
And pretty soon you're going on relationships and ministry and structure, but it's all lost its life, it's lost its energy, it's lost its excitement, it's lost its enthusiasm. And once you've lost that, it's pretty hard to keep everybody going. You have to really center in on the vision. So we're going to take 4 minutes now because I think it's important. And just find 3 or 4 people around you. And I just want you to talk. And if you're from the same church, that's good. If not, just talk about your setting. And try to identify where you think your church is on that curve. And I'll go up a couple of slides where the definitions are too. So just 4 or 5 minutes, chat a bit, and then we'll come back and wrap things up.
It's curious.
I have no vision.